Case study number 2, our desert sunset. Now, I wanted to use this as a case study because this is one of those situations where I'll be the first person to admit that for this particular shot on top, bouncing off a reflector from 20 feet in distance is not a practical approach to lighting this shot, okay? But that's not really why we're doing it, and that's not really why we taught these techniques. Most of the time, these techniques are actually quite reasonable and they're very practical to use in any type of situation. And I've told you that basically when you are bouncing, it's best to bounce within, say, 10 feet. Have the modifier around 10 feet from the flash so that you can easily reach it, 10 to 15 feet. Once you start going further than that, it gets a little bit difficult to control where it's hitting on the reflector and then where it's bouncing to on the subject. And in those situations, you're gonna get better light, more consistent light from off-camera light setups, which we're gonna cover in Lighting 201 and Lighting 301. So why do we even teach these types of techniques if they're not necessarily practical in every situation? Because lighting and photography overall is what I would classify as a MacGyver skill. In so many situations, by the way, I hope I did not just date myself, and I hope most of you understand who MacGyver is. If not, well, I don't really know. I only watched some of the episodes and so forth. But MacGyver basically was this guy that could essentially make a bomb out of like toothpicks, and he'd be stuck in like a jail cell, and he'd be able to get out of the jail cell by using like a gum wrapper and like a little piece of underwear or something like that. Anyway, it was ridiculous. He'd always be able to come up with some sort of solution to any problem whatsoever, no matter what the problem was. Okay, so when I say photography is kind of like the ultimate type of MacGyver test, it's because you're always going to be in situations where you don't necessarily have the gear that you want or the gear that you might even need with you. You might have that gear at home, it might not be with you. You might be at a location where they simply don't allow you to use the kind of gear that would be best for that shot. Or maybe you're just in a situation where you got to get a shot quick and you have to just use what you have available to you. Like for example, with this, actually it was a previous shot that we were getting with Yvette kind of over that sand in the background. We had 5 minutes to get that shot before that sun was gone, okay? I didn't have my off-camera flashes set up yet, even though I brought them with me because we were filming for Lighting 201. So what did I do? Knowing these techniques, I just grabbed a reflector, told my assistant to come out, let's go and get the shot. And we used these simple bounce techniques. These techniques are fantastic because when you're in these situations, all the light modification tips that we've taught you so far, you can use. When you have no bounce, someone's wearing a white shirt, pull them over near you. When you have no bounce and you have something small like an f-stop or flash disc, hold it up, bounce off of that. We've taught you all these different techniques for light modification because you're gonna be in situations where you simply don't have what you would like to have. And knowing these techniques is gonna help you to still get a fantastic image. So, that being said, when we get to Lighting 201, we're gonna cover even more awesome techniques, and we have a little bit of a kind of teaser here too. So for this top shot, what do we have? When we approach the scene, the first shot, always, the first shot, you go for your background, right? You go to kind of figure out, what do I wanna shoot? What do I wanna have in this shot? I wanna have Yvette over on this right side. I wanna have this kind of cloth trailing in through the frame. I would have loved to be able to get up higher so we could shoot down on the desert and see more of the desert behind her and see this kind of coming into the bottom of the frame, but I didn't have anything to get me up that high, and we're losing light very quickly. So I kind of just went with this composition. And I like the sky, I like the tone, and I liked having a little bit of desert in the bottom of the frame. Okay, great. Once we get that shot, and that shot was at 1/200 of a second at f2.8 and ISO 100. We don't need any filters, ND filters or anything like that because it's already dark, it's already sunset. And by the way, when the sun is setting, guys, yes, you need to move a little bit quicker, but don't move so fast that you kind of forget what's going on. I want to say that most of the fantastic sunset shots don't come when the sun is above the horizon. It comes just below. But the funny thing is that most photographers, when they're shooting sunset, they'll leave as soon as the sun dips below the horizon. And they'll leave before what we call peak color. Peak color is that 10 to 15 minute moment that's just well, it's about a 5-minute moment that's about 10 to 15 minutes after the sun drops below the horizon. And it lights all the clouds and everything on the horizon from underneath. It looks absolutely fantastic. It lasts about 5 minutes, and it's after sunset. So just because you see the sun setting, don't rush through it. Remember that your best shot is probably gonna come after it goes below the horizon. Okay, So once we get this shot, Yvette's completely in the silhouette. I do have a little bit of light direction coming from the left side. So I match that light direction with the silver reflector. The silver reflector is being held pretty far in distance from where I'm flashing from. Okay, so we're throwing the flash, 105 zoom, all the way over to this reflector. And again, if you want to use a snoot in that kind of an instance, it's a perfect time to use it. The grid is going to do a good job of funneling the light forward, but it's also going to cut down the amount of light too. So it's kind of, you have to kind of weigh the options there. Okay, so we started with that silver. We actually started with a white over silver, by the way, and we tossed the white because we weren't getting enough light back. So we were just getting a little kiss of light, and it wasn't enough to get our correct exposure. So we had Trevor toss that. And by the way, for this shoot, we had my fantastic friend and incredible photographer, Trevor Daly, out to assist us. I just announced on my Facebook page, we're gonna go do a desert shoot, who wants to come along? And Trevor was like, dude, I'll come along and hold lights for you. And I'm like, dude, you shouldn't be holding lights. You should be taking all the photos. You're a fantastic photographer. And this is the fun thing about being a photographer, guys, is you have so many opportunities to go on each other's shoots. And it's a lot of fun. We had such a blast out there. And I learned things from Trevor when he's there because he's shooting and he's taking some images. And I'm sure he learns from some of the things that we're doing. It's just a fun experience overall. So involve your friends, involve other photographers, because we're friends. We're not competitors. Okay. So once we get this, we have our lighting from the left so that we match the direction of that available light with the silver. And then basically we're shooting until we got the cloth kind of with the right wind on it. So for this one, the cloth wrapped too high. The wind caught it and kind of lifted it up. We shot just until we got that cloth to kind of wrap around, and I had an assistant just holding it off to the camera left. Okay, that's how we got the image. When I got that, I thought, okay, good. I've got a basic image here, and if I was in a pinch, this image is nice. It's great. But now I want to get my image. I want to get my awesome image if I had no restrictions whatsoever. So here's a little teaser in the Lighting 201, because we're going to do so many fantastic things in 201. It'll be just like 101. We're going to do a ton of different types of shoots. And here is one of the looks that we're going for. On this one, by the way, we use the Sigma 35mm in this top shot. I love the new Sigma art lenses. They're fantastic. So this is the same Sigma 35mm f2.8 art. We're at 1/100 of a second, f4 and ISO 100. And we're using the Bolt Flash. The Bolt Flash was that, I don't know if it's still down there, but it's that flash that we talked about earlier that's a bare bulb flash that you can use to modify, and it's very powerful, and it's fantastic for location shooting because it's kind of this in-between. More powerful than a pocket strobe, but less powerful and more portable than a studio strobe. So it's kind of a great in-between flash. We use that with the Westcott Rapid Box on a Benro monopod. So I call this my boomstick. I don't know why. Well, usually because on my boomstick, I usually put 2 bolt flashes, so it's very, very powerful, and it booms. So I call it my boomstick. Okay, so we take the boomstick, and I think Trevor is actually holding this off to camera left. I forgot who was actually holding it in this shot. Probably Trevor. And he's holding it up, basically, and we get a nice loop light coming top down from the left side. And we shoot, and I have Olivia on the outside of this, giving a little ruffle. And I have Yvette kind of shaking, and what I told Yvette is, shake, but then when you come back, let your arm rest. So I don't want it to look like your muscles are engaged and like as if you're actually shaking it yourself. I want it to look like your muscles are resting, like the wind is catching this. We shot a couple images, and man, it was so easy. It's so easy on this type of a shot to do it with a off-camera light setup because the light's coming from a distance. We're shooting a very complex type shot where we have to get this ruffle just right. These are the situations where I cannot worry about having to bounce perfectly into 2 or 3 different reflectors to get the shot. So, while most of the techniques that we've taught you so far are very practical, very reasonable to use on really any shoot, sometimes when you get outdoors like in this scene, these aren't going to be practical setups. And so you need to go to basically off-camera light setups, which we're going to cover in Lighting 201. Just keep that in mind, and again, anytime that it's been a less practical type setup, I've told you that, okay? Otherwise, if we've just done it like as usual, it's totally practical and reasonable to expect to be able to do it. The only time I've said that it's gonna be impractical to use these types of techniques is when you're outdoors, you're trying to use more than one reflector because you need to set up stands unless you have tons of assistance, and you're shooting at longer lengths, like your lighting is 15, 20 feet, 25 feet away from who you're lighting and from the camera flash itself. Okay, that's it for the tutorial. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Let's head on to the next video now.